So here we are doing a happy hour. It reminds me of the old days of talk shows when people just sat and talked.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They'd have guests on because they were interesting, they were smart. They didn't have books, CDs, concert tours, movies, TV shows to sell.
No, nothing to sell.
They just, hey, so-and-so's in town. Let's have them on tonight, and we'll sit and talk with them for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that today. I sent Monica a link to Oscar Peterson on the Dick Cavett show.
Oh,
back in
yeah.
90
Yeah, that's
And so-
legendary. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. But I was thinking Dick Cavett also on the other side as the host, he had no agenda. He wasn't trying to up Oscar in any category. He was just interested in piano styles.
Yeah.
That's so refreshing.
Yeah.
And what he
And
said.
on those shows, like all the way back to Jack Parr and Steve Allen, the guest would come out and sit and talk, and then they'd bring the next guest out, and the current guest would move over a notch.
And they talk,
They did it with 4 or 5 people out there talking.
Yeah.
Well, I can remember being in, I don't know why I only saw it in California, I guess because I lived in Memphis at the time, but going to California for the first time and discovering the Steve Allen show. It might not have been the Tonight Show then. It might just have been the show that he had. And, oh, man, I was completely addicted to him and that crazy hipster humor that they had going.
Oh,
Yeah, I used to watch that show from Terre Haute, Indiana.
Yeah.
And we'd have to tune into channel 13 in Indianapolis, and the weather had to be just right. And you had to point the antenna on the house just the right direction.
Yeah, that's kind of how it was in Memphis.
And see, who were the regulars?
Louis
Steve
Nye,
Lawrence, Louis Nye.
the guy that did Jose
Don
Jimenez.
Knotts.
Yeah, Don Knotts.
The guy that did what?
And he did the Jose, what was his name?
Jose
Oh, my
Jimenez.
gosh. What was that guy's name? Bill
and then
Dana,
there was
yeah.
the tall guy that played the farmer on another show later on.
Right, right.
Tom Poston? No.
Tom Poston.
Tom Poston, yeah. And they were like a repertory company that
And
never,
Terry Gibbs Band.
Yeah.
yeah, and what a band that was. Good grief. I saw a clip from that. I see a lot of great stuff due to my addiction to the great Angela Levy, because she remembers all that stuff and she'll put up clips of
You
all
were
those
supposed
people.
to connect us.
Was I? Because
Yeah.
I guess my mind went semi-south, because I think almost every day this would make the greatest happy hour ever.
Yeah, let's
Tell
have
me
her
about
on.
Angela Levy. I don't know about Angela Levy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
She was
Roger,
fascinating.
you have got to get
We'll
connected.
put
to
Roger
her.
on the show with us.
Oh, Roger
ahead.
would be perfect, because they would know a lot of the same people. She's the widow of Stan Levy,
Oh, okay.
and she was been with Stan Levy, the great one
Stan
of
Levy.
the original,
I've heard
one
of
of the 2 or 3 original bebop drummers,
Mm-hmm.
who was among his roommates, and her best friends were Charlie Parker. Dizzy Gillespie is her youngest son's godfather. And there's nobody that up through that, all the way up through the beginning of this century, that they didn't know and were involved with. And things will happen on there, like somebody will put up a picture. The other day, somebody put up a picture of Bird, and I can't remember who else, but it was clear who the middle person was. And then Max Roach, the 3 of them coming out of the old Birdland. And it was Max Roach, but there got to be an argument among the hipster people on this jazz photograph website, saying, well, I don't think that's Max. I think it's so-and-so and so-and-so. And then she chimed in and said, now that's definitely Charlie and whoever the middle person was, and Max for sure. And the contentious person came on and said, well, how do you know so much? Why are you so smart about this? And she said, you could almost feel her take a beat. And she said, well, honey, I took the picture. which is very much like your story of the Sinatra guys walking by.
Yeah.
But I mean but I mean she's not presumptuous or overbearing about that. She just knew all those people.
Yeah.
They were her
She was
friends.
there.
Her best
Yeah.
friend, her best girlfriend was Peggy Lee and June Christie. And of course she has all these pictures, like family pictures, you know.
You know, Peggy Lee's granddaughter talked about that. Is she, was Stan connected with Lou Levy, the piano player?
Only as a rhythm section. They weren't related, but they were
Okay.
I think they spelled their last names differently too.
Yeah, the Stan has an E in it.
Oh, okay.
So she's 90 and she looks and reads intellectually no age at all. I mean,
Yeah.
she's just
Well, let's
fun
get her
to-
on the show. Do you connect me?
Yeah, I'll do it. I will do that tomorrow.
I
Thank
read
you.
somewhere that Stan Levy was a boxer before he was a drummer.
He was a boxer and he was huge.
Mhm.
And he learned. There's so much good stuff about him. I have a book I'll send you about him.
Well, he's got a boxer's nose.
He does. He
Yeah.
does. And he was he had some run-ins with drugs and then abandoned those and got really straight. And they had a great family life.
Hmm.
And he learned how to play the drums left-handed because he taught himself. He wasn't left-handed, but his whole life he played the drums left-handed. So she's just incredibly interesting, and she would love you guys.
How did you meet her?
Just on Facebook.
Okay.
I saw who she
So
was.
it's a relatively new friendship.
Well, it's like a couple of years now, but she and we commiserate. So it's more than just a casual thing. She lives up in Silver Springs or Sandy Springs, Maryland.
Okay.
She's interesting.
Was he on the Facebook?
Yes, and you should definitely. I imagine she has empty spaces on there. You would love the stuff that goes by.
She has a place on her dance card for you.
Yeah, she does.
Cool.
So yeah, I'll do that for sure.
Hey, so let's talk about Duffy for a few minutes. You guys want to, or is it too sad?
No, I've been thinking about Duffy all day. I know we all have.
Yeah.
I think, we hadn't, this is all kind of, now we're flying by the seat of our pants, and that's fine with me.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to be really sad. That's not my point. But I think a life like Duffy's deserves to be discussed a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think we should do a happy hour talking about Duffy and celebrating Duffy and drummers and friends and all that.
Do you know
and let that go where it's going to go.
Do you know who a good friend of his was? And he liked to play with him? Vince Gill.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
We could probably get him.
Oh, for sure.
Some of the other people that have played with Duffy.
Yeah.
And we all have stories,
Everybody,
and just other drummers and other people here in Nashville and beyond. I don't care. Anyone who wants to talk about and celebrate Duffy, that's great. But for now, first, cheers, Duffy.
Duffy.
I have a little anecdote that Mike Longo told me. Because both of them came from Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
And Duffy's father was a friend of Mike's father. Mike's father was the bass player also. And Duffy went to the same high school that Mike did, but Mike was older. We were old. He was about 3 or 4 years behind us, but that irrespective of the playing, because he learned very early, with his dad and everything.
Oh yeah.
And Mike played a lot with Chubby, his father, even in high school, where he'd play little cocktail stuff, and and they were all
no kidding. Wow.
Oh yeah, and Mike's father and Duffy's father were close friends and all that. But Mike told me that I can't remember who it was, but there was another guy that they hung out with, and he had a little convertible in high school. He was like the big deal, guy.
Right.
And that movie,
Porky's.
Oh no.
was based on that high school, and that really happened. That stuff in that movie.
Kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so they had, remember the woman that was in something else later that was really nice. But she was the like a track coach or something like that.
Oh,
yeah.
There's
And
there's just one scene that I can't.
and they would hear this screaming sound. She and the coach are going at it again. Boom.
Oh
Wow.
no, that's not. Do you remember the snake in the toilet?
Oh gosh, yeah.
I swear to God, I cannot use the restroom in the dark because I always think there's going to be a snake in the toilet because of that fucking movie. So yeah, it's all because of porgies.
Well, the scene where the coach, I can't remember if he was a basketball coach or something, and then they had a lady coach for the women, and she was this really tall, big kind of, wrestling person.
Yeah, she was massive.
And one of the seniors had cut a hole in the wall.
Oh,
Girls' restroom, you remember that?
yeah.
And the coach was so cynical, he just wanted to get out of there all the time. And so she went to the coach's office to report that these guys had cut this hole in the wall while the girls were dressing and stuff. And the coach just thought it was funny, so he laid down on the couch and laughed and held his stomach. And
Wow.
I've seen that movie 3 times, and every time they get to that place, I just fall over in my chair. It's just the funniest thing.
That was
Every time she would say, "Well, they saw everything," and he would laugh some more, and it was like this huge laugh fest. Billy fell out of his chair, by the way, when he saw that.
That was many people's favorite movie of that year, for sure.
I think I have a copy of it, actually.
I've been thinking a lot about, I really have thought so much about all those Duffy things that we're going to miss,
Yeah.
all the things that were unique to him. And of course, musically, my gosh, but just the whole rest of Duffy, just totally unique.
Yeah.
Duffy was a show on and off the stage.
But then on the other side of that coin, for me at least, I got to play with him so much in the last 8 or 10 years, and it's just total joy, total joy.
He and his wife lived here for what, 12, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah, I guess, Roger, you probably know more about this than anybody, but it's kind of our good luck that he ended up here.
He actually was hired by a guy what's that city out in the middle of nowhere where that hotel was?
Wartrace.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Guy had a club there and wanted him to come up and be the band leader for his jazz lounge in his hotel. And of course, that didn't pan out the way the hotel club owner thought it was going to. So Duffy ended up kind of stranded here, and to our great fortune.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, yeah.
I've known him since 1978.
Really? Oh, from Florida, you mean, or just in general?
In general. The first time I met him, I was playing in the house band in Vegas at the Tender Trap.
Oh, I saw somebody mentioned that on Facebook. Yeah,
it was a jazz gig that was 11 at night to 5 in the morning, 6 nights a week.
Oh my!
And that's where I learned to play time.
I bet.
Man. That's fantastic.
That endurance, that repetition, that grind, and luckily I played with a great drummer, a guy named Tom Montgomery.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
That sounds
great
familiar.
player.
He was He was with the Woody Herman Band and then the Al Boleto.
Yeah,
Sextet.
that's where I knew him from, the Al Boleto Band. I loved his playing.
And he settled into Vegas and had been there forever when I showed up. And he was the house drummer on that gig.
Wow.
And he reminded me of Lewis Hayes because he was a very energetic, busy drummer. He was always chatter, driving, kicking, and pocket for days. And so I had to do that for 6 hours a night with that guy.
Wow.
I could do that. I could play that gig, but I could only play it once. Then I'd be done.
Well, I probably did that for 8 or 9 months before I got a house band gig.
That's amazing. But somebody was remembering that gig and Duffy coming in when he was maybe subbing on Woody's band or something. He was in town with somebody.
He was in town with Sammy.
And right. And so were you there when he came in and played drums? And we'll tell that because that's so cool.
Well, he just blew in and, I knew his name and he wanted to sit in and play. And that's when we met, somewhere in 1978.
Wow.
And we've kept track of each other and crossed paths ever since.
Mm.
Well, thanks to you guys, I've gotten to play with him, and I'm going to miss it. The very last thing I said to him when I talked to him on the phone when he was in the hospital last week, and this, I never said a truer thing, was that one of the things that was keeping me going was the awareness that I might get on your bandstand again with him when this is all over.
Aww.
And he appreciated that, and he knew I meant it. So we just have to now make our peace with the fact that that won't happen.
One of my favorite things that I remember was he used to sub with us if Chris was out of town at F. Scott's.
Right.
And you never knew what he was going to do. Sometimes he would just sit there and cook, and then other times he'd get up and walk around the place.
Yeah.
All that. So I can't remember what the tune was, but we were taking fours one night, and we all, passed it around. And then there was, he just put his sticks down and got up and walked in front of, this is all in time, walked in front of the bass drum and tap danced for the people in the audience.
Yep.
And then back down on the
so good.
Nailed it perfectly.
That's so good.
He was known to burst into scat too.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm on record as saying he's one of about 3 humans that I love to hear scat.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's actually someone who could tolerate.
And the other 26 billion, I don't want to hear scat.
Little girls that learn it,
Right.
And
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. Celine has joined, so I want to go ahead and bring her on. Okay. All right.
Hello,
actually,
Celine.
Hi, Celine. I think I said your name wrong. This is the very first question.
and we're
help. Is it Celine?
It is Celine or Celine. My rule is that I always take anything that isn't Celeste or Cecile, which is what I do.
Okay. Anything that's kind of in the neighborhood, you're okay with.
Exactly. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, we're just so glad you're here.
We're drinking and reminiscing and, doing what you do in a happy hour, right? So,
absolutely.
Oh, thank you for doing this. This is so cool.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this. It's nice to meet you all.
Well, it's been a real pleasure for since we knew we were doing this, getting to find out more about you. What an interesting, busy life you have, and how much great stuff you get done in the middle of.
She's a Wonder Woman. She's doing all kinds of great things. So.
It's been great, and your jazz cast have been putting me to sleep at night in the good way.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that so much.
Beautiful choices, beautiful playlists, and your comments.
I want to do a quick little introduction here, just so you know who you're speaking with. Obviously, we have Beegie in front of the purple wall. So, And George Tidwell with the hat. George is, I call him a trumpet master. He is everything you want to hear in a trumpet player. And we love playing with him and traveling with him and all that good stuff. So,
You're too kind.
Roger Spencer, who is next to you on the screen. Roger is, in this world, he's mostly known as Beegie's bassist. And he's a very funny guy. If you need cocktail recipes, he's your man.
Okay, so email me, please. I'm ready.
Tonight I'm making Bill Samuel's martini or Manhattan recipe.
How do you? Okay, so last week we filmed a happy hour with Bill Samuels Jr., who is the CEO emeritus of Maker's Mark. His father and his mother created Maker's Mark. And he was the CEO for many years. He's retired, and his son has taken it over. And he needed to educate Roger. He felt the need to educate Roger on how to build the proper Manhattan. So, what do you think about it, Raj?
I think it's going to require a lot more research.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, wonderful.
It's different than my recipe, but it's really nice.
Yeah.
I gave him my recipe on the show, and he looked like, nah.
Not so much. What is so? Manhattan is my drink. What is the recipe?
Oh,
if I may ask.
Well, Bill Samuel's recipe is 2.5 parts Maker's 101.
Okay.
1 part French vermouth, not the Italian. He hates Italian vermouth.
Wow.
I've been using the Carpana Antico forever, and he was like, "Oh no, that's too bitter." So he says, "Use the Dolan French vermouth and a cherry, no bitters."
No bitters.
Right.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, I think I'll have to try it because it's my responsibility, right?
It is. If you're going to be a part of this research team, you're our northern branch. You know?
Yeah. There we go. Thank you. I'm honored.
Well, that's what this is really all about. It's what's everybody drinking and how long it can last. So, anyway, BG, what are you drinking this evening?
Just plain old. What's the brand? I forgot.
It's California Chardonnay. We'll just leave it at that.
It's a nice light drink.
Yeah.
And,
I have my traditional Lipton iced tea in a plastic glass.
Yeah.
He's
so
a designated driver. I'm crazy. I actually have seen you take a drink in a hotel bar or
scandalous
dive bar.
It's been a while.
But it's one shot of Chardonnay, and you're through.
I'm done.
The night.
I'm done. I'm such an easy.
That's
mark,
That's okay. That's all good.
It's the old joke. My favorite bourbon is Old Factory Whistle, 2 blasts, and you're through for the day.
There you go. That's what's his name on the Dick Van Dyke Show?
That's right.
Oh, we watch Dick Van Dyke like every night here. Every other night
on Hulu or something.
Yeah,
it is. It's on Hulu. I've been watching it as well.
So that's how I discovered Alvin Stoller. No, that's not true. That was the second encounter with Alvin Stoller. The first one was Keely Smith's On the Sunny Side of the Street, and I just lost it. I went bonkers. But Dick Van Dyke Show, I fell in love with that drummer. And Duffy actually was the one that told me, and Roger confirmed it, or vice versa, that it was Alvin Stoller.
And Billie Holiday's track of Comes Love.
Oh, yeah.
I have to revisit that one. I don't know that
that's
one.
Alvin.
We should tell her maybe that we were briefly celebrating commiserating over the loss.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I emailed earlier. Duffy, I don't know how much you know about him, and I'm not the expert to share it, but he started his career with Monty Alexander. Molly, come on.
Molly.
How much it was drinking has been happening.
It really hasn't. I'm super tired. I'm sorry. His career started with Ray Brown and Monty Alexander.
And talk about a rhythm section. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, right. So, but anyway, yeah.
I think Duffy told me his first gig out of high school, Ray Brown flew him to LA to play with Monty Alexander, Teddy Edwards, and Milt Jackson.
Not so bad.
Yeah.
Not so bad.
That'll work.
Celine, I wanted to say that you sent, Monica shared with us the 3 YouTube videos that you sent down.
Oh, yeah.
Monty Alexander and your dad and what's one of it?
Shirley Horn.
Shirley
To
Horn.
I don't know.
And
Jones, I think.
it's just one.
Yeah.
Yes, with your dad. Yeah,
Yes.
just
Oh,
wonderful.
if you love me. If you love
And
me.
I was saying, I bet I've watched that her video with that beautiful orchestral chart 50 times. It's just so beautiful.
It's stunning.
Yeah. What's your
Yeah.
connection to those tracks? Why did you choose those? I'm curious.
Well, I chose the Monty one because it's not that live recording is not the original one that I was introduced to. It that one is newer. I believe it's from 2014 originally. But that song was my introduction to Monty's music that I remember. That I can. I'm sure there was much more that was played around my house, but I was not old enough to take it in at the time.
Right.
And so it's always meant so much to me, and I cry absolutely every single time I hear him play it. And of course, because he's Monty, it's a life-changing rendition every time he plays it.
Right.
So he's just one of a kind. And so that's a favorite for me. The Shirley track actually connects it very distantly to the one I sent of Dad and Oliver, because it was Oliver that turned me onto that recording, to that song. I had never heard it.
And it's from that great
Years to
album.
Life.
I mean, that's a Desert Island album,
Yeah.
if it ever was. Well, that's
Absolutely.
that's very nice.
And a side note, Roger's wife introduced Laurie Meacham, who's a marvelous pianist. She introduced me to that album, that Shirley Horn Here's to Life project. Wow. Just to tie it all up together here.
It's remarkable. So, it's remarkable. I mean, Shirley is someone who I just think is, if you're a jazzer, then of course but she's someone that I find sometimes people haven't heard or haven't researched, and I just think that's awful. So I force it on everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something that she brings to a song that really no one else brings. She's fearless about the time.
Oh.
She puts the time where the time is for her, and it's just so it's everything good. It's romantic. It's just wonderful. And I love it too, because she phrases like a horn player. So I definitely can connect to that.
That she does. There's very few artists that can affect me the way that she has. I just feel like she's getting right. She's hitting me right in the deepest part of my soul. No matter what she's playing, even a song you wouldn't necessarily think you could connect with emotionally, you just enjoy listening to it, she finds a way.
Right.
Did you ever meet her?
I did not. And if I did, then it was, again, an instance where I was too young to remember. I did meet her, but I don't recall I don't recall any of the conversation. But we were on the cruise when I was quite young. We were all on a jazz cruise. So that's when I'm sure I would have met her then. But again, I would have been very young. There are some instances that I know happened that I unfortunately have no recollection of. And now, as a fangirl many years later, I'm very, very.
Oh, that's sweet.
We're all in the fan club.
Gosh, and as a piano player, what a great piano player. She's wonderful. So that's just a very long way of saying all 3 of those were great.
They're
choices.
marvelous tracks. They're marvelous tracks. So so are you in Canada right now? Do you live in
Yes.
Canada?
I do. I live in Toronto.
Okay. Toronto. Okay. We were having this conversation. I was wagering on Montreal, but Beegie said Toronto, so she wins.
You're right. Yes, you were right.
Well,
Have you always lived in Toronto?
I have. I grew up just outside of Toronto in a town called Mississauga, a city called Mississauga.
Right.
And that was where my dad moved in the 70s. And
okay.
so I spent my entire childhood there. And then when I moved out of the house, I moved downtown, right in the downtown core.
Cool.
And this past summer, I actually moved a little bit further out of downtown, which was definitely the right choice. And I'm very happy I made it. This has always been home for me.
Good.
I love Toronto. I've only spent a little bit of time there, and it's been a long time. But I felt very much at home in the little bit of time that I spent there. I thought it was like a really clean New York. That's what I'm like, it's clean. It's like the subways are clean. And, you know,
Kind of in the same way that Canada is a really clean United States.
maybe.
so
I think Canada wins in a lot of ways on us, but that's probably not the subject. But
I met Oscar in Toronto.
Oh,
Really?
Wow.
We were up
met
there
him in
for the
Amsterdam.
IAJA conference, I think, in 2003, and he just put out his book. So we all got in line to get the autographed copy, and I got to meet him. I never got to hear him play live, but there are so many recordings and so many videos.
Oh, it's wonderful.
yeah.
The will to swing.
and
So
Did you say you met him in Amsterdam?
Toronto.
Actually, I did, and it was
Beach, yeah.
it was a 5-minute thing. My husband and I were going on a trip, and we flew to Amsterdam and wound up there at 6 a.m. and had to change planes to go to Dubrovnik and then to the Greek islands. And we were all so tired. We'd been flying all night and everything. And I was sitting in the lobby kind of thing where you wait for the next plane. And they had a lot of little gift shops and stuff like that. And I was half asleep, and I looked up, and there was this gigantic man in a beautiful cashmere overcoat.
Oh.
And he had 2 guys with him. And I looked at my husband, and I said, I think that's Oscar Peterson. And he was shopping for something, a watch or something. And
Very on brand.
Anyway, silly me, which I always do. I met Louis Armstrong the same way. I just walked up to him and said, I want to know you. So
That's great.
I walked over there. My husband said, well, go say hi to it, So I walked over and waited till he had a chance to sort of turn around. And I introduced myself. And I told him I had a lot of his records and that I was a pianist. And we had like a little 3-minute conversation, and he was very kind to me. And he was going someplace else, I think, maybe Paris or something. And, but it was just kind of a nice little thing because it just happened,
Yeah,
And
that's
it was
a
5
sweet
minutes
story.
long. And so it was like when I met Milt Jackson, I opened Mike Longo's door, and they were going to play cards, and it was Milt Jackson, and he said, where do I hang my coat? So I took it.
My.
So I was like, by then I was working as a full-time piano player, but I felt like a kid when I saw these people.
Sure.
And your dad was very, very kind to me, and we laughed and talked about how hard it was to fly and all that kind of stuff for about 5 minutes, and that was it.
That's very sweet.
That's lovely.
Well,
we recently had Holly Foster Wells. I don't know if you've met Holly or not, but she's the granddaughter of Peggy Lee. And I have a feeling, perhaps I'm wrong, but I have a feeling you all would have a lot to talk about. You'd have a lot in common, just in the sense of preservation and legacy and sadly legal things and everything in between, right? Like it's the protection of the person you love as a human and their intellectual property. And and Holly was marvelous. It felt so neat to have somebody like that on the show who just knew so much about her grandmother. And she had a chance to travel with her, like you had a chance to be a part of your dad's life. Even at a young age, I'm sure you absorbed a lot of it, right? Like, I assume you have a lot of really cool memories, right? So I always thought that was really neat that we have this chance to carry things on and talk about these things like this, even in our drunken stupor, as we might be.
That is my preferred way to hold conversation, though, so it's fine.
I would like to remind everyone we're in a pandemic, and so yeah, you just get by however you're supposed to get by. So
Exactly. So Holly would be so fascinating to talk to.
I'll connect you. Do you want me to
I would love that.
Okay.
That'd be wonderful. I'd love that. Thank you.
Happy to. Well, I don't know. Sometimes you're just supposed to know people. Maybe you, and you have a lot of friends in common. I know because we have a lot of Birdland friends in common. And she's very connected into that world. So I think that would be neat for you guys to chat. And she keeps up with a lot of the estates of other people. So it's a thing for her. She's not a musician. Which brings me to something I want to ask you in a minute, but
are you going to ask her if she plays the piano?
Yeah. I love the name of your show.
We love the name.
No, I thank you very much.
So, but anyway, you're doing like a ton of things, and for everyone watching, I mean, CELINE has her own identity, her own career, her own, I mean, you're managing artists, you're producing festivals, you're doing your lecture series. I mean, you've got so many things going on with or without a pandemic. You're ruling Canada and the world. So I think that's neat. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
So tell us about the radio show a little bit, would you?
Yes. So jazzcast.ca is an online broadcast platform that was started. I think we're now just about 2 years in now. It'll be 2 years in May. And it was started by some very beloved and respected members of the jazz broadcast and broadcast in general community here in Toronto. And they wanted to do something that was their own and that incorporated people within the community who were not necessarily musicians. And so they reached out to a bunch of different people. So there's some wonderful programming on there, and they're continuing to grow their roster of hosts. So great bassist Rich Brown here hosts a program called New Origins. Singer Alex Pangman here hosts a program called Swing Set, which I adore. There's a Corey Weeds, who's a sax player and runs a label in BC, a fantastic label that has released a number of really wonderful projects. He has a program as well. And then my show. So they asked me if I were going to do something, what would I want to do? And that's how the program was born. So it's called No, I Do Not Play Piano. And just to answer my the question I get most frequently. So yeah, that's how that happened. But I enjoy it. It's the first time I've done something like that, especially regularly. So I've enjoyed it.
Well, you are wonderful at it, and I've really enjoyed your choices because there's a nice mix of what I assume may be a Canadian artist that we haven't yet heard, and the famous and the in between, but such a good selection.
Thank you.
Each I've listened to maybe 3 or 4 of them front to back now.
Wow! Thank you so much.
Oh, they're just a pleasure.
I'm glad you're enjoying them.
Really nice.
That makes me very happy.
Good.
And we all have a mutual friend in Jeff Hamilton.
Yes. So, yes.
Roger, you go back probably the longest, and CELINE goes back the longest, but you probably go back even further. Well, Jeff, actually, no, you probably go back further.
With Jeff, 1971.
Yeah.
Well, CELINE can't.
Roger wins.
I can't go back that far.
You cannot do that.
Back then, we were at Indiana University together. It was in that same group of misfits, Jeff Hamilton, Peter Erskine, Alan Pasqua.
Wow.
There's more.
So
But,
so many great people came out of there.
yeah, we played a lot together back then in college, and then went our separate ways and ended up in LA together and played a lot together out there. Now, Lori, my wife, knows him even longer because her father had a music store in Anderson, Indiana, and one of the great drum coaches of the entire Midwest region taught at this music store, and Jeff Hamilton was a student of his. So Lori knows Jeff from when Jeff was like in high school and was taking drum lessons with Lori's brother.
Wow.
So we go way back.
So he's a good thread for everybody.
Yeah.
Was it one of your shows that I haven't listened yet, but either one of yours or one of the other folks had a show that was all like dedicated to Jeff Hamilton, all Jeff Hamilton?
That was me. That was for his birthday last year. Yes.
Oh, okay. So I'll listen to that tonight. Good.
I love it. That was fun to put together. Very hard to put together because I could not. I spent a lot of time trying to narrow what I wanted to play down to 2 hours, which is no small feat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Now, are you close to a lot of the people that you're? Well, let me ask this first. Is your show inspired by the musicians that you met through your dad? Is that where you get your inspiration for the playlist, or where do you get that?
That's where some of it started as music I grew up listening to. And I wanted to be able to share some of what was played in our home that I still connect with or that inspires me today. And then it morphed into also wanting to be able to showcase music that I'm listening to now, because I've said, that we're all still growing. As long as we're breathing, we're still growing, we're still evolving. So I think that still very much works.
Yeah.
So it's definitely in part inspired by the people that I was around and that I've been exposed to, both past and present.
And people you're managing. I mean, you're doing your own thing. You've got a roster of people that I manage one trio, and it's like herding cats. I don't know how you do it.
They're pretty well behaved. Roger.
Yeah, they're missing only the drummer, who's another very fine and eccentric gentleman.
But I think it's
I
fun.
trade them for the world.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's definitely a very special is not necessarily the right word, but it's an intimate relationship. It's a very deeply personal relationship, and one of immense trust and patience and all of those things. It's fun. I very much enjoy the work that I get to do representing people and working with people. And I've been lucky that I've gotten so far to mostly work only with people I happen to like. So that's quite a treat. That's very rare.
That's really a real bonus.
How many artists are you managing now?
Pardon me?
How many artists do you manage?
Full time, I focus mostly on Robbie Botosh, who's an exceptional pianist and composer and multi-instrumentalist, really, but mainly piano here. And I've worked also with Ben Patterson, a pianist out of New York, and Paul Marinaro, a fantastic vocalist out of Chicago. And right now I'm also working pretty full time with Jackie Richardson, who's just an incredible vocalist here. She's American originally, but she's been ours in Canada for many, many years now. And she's just spectacular.
And we'll put your website up so everyone can go to your website and see your roster of people that you're working with. Yeah, of course. Obviously, that's part of it. But yeah, I find it fascinating that you're juggling all of these things. Have you managed to find a creative way of keeping the circulation through the pandemic? I'm not entirely sure what the pandemic looks like in Canada. It can't look much differently than here, although I'm sure you all are much smarter.
But that's I would love
subject.
to think that, but that's not true. I wish it was, but we're definitely, I think, in fairly similar situations, generally speaking, in terms of the pandemic. And I think that so the people I work with are also in similar situations, and it's not very much is coming around, which is fine. So there's been a lot of us trying to figure out how to be creative to not only advance some projects, but to get some income for everybody to keep some food on their table.
No kidding. That's a big part of it.
It's a really big part of it. So it's been a bit of a balancing act, and taken a lot of it just takes a lot of emotional energy, as I'm sure everybody here can relate to.
I wanted to say I don't want to open this up if you don't want to particularly talk about it, but I wanted to say that your blog post on finding the happy really, really resonated with me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I reread it several times, and I've been looking harder for the happy too. It was very, very thoughtful and it was personal. So I don't want to ask you questions about it. I just wanted to say I appreciated it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's hard. And I think that we often are told or made to feel in some way that we need to feel a certain way, or we need to think a certain way, or need to approach something a certain way, when really we need to do whatever we have to get by and to make it through until the next day. And it's okay to, just because you're feeling how you're feeling, or you're expressing your emotion in some way, or you're having a hard time, doesn't mean that you don't take for granted the ways in which you might have privilege over somebody else, and you might be in a better position than somebody else. We're all allowed to feel how we feel, especially now, but really anytime. And, no one should be passing judgment on how someone's, doing their best to get by. It's just I'm not taking it anymore.
Okay. So can we just decree now that that's how it's going to be from now on? Starting here.
I have spoken.
Well,
I think, I don't know how to say this, but I think because I've had a lot of judgment towards people.
You think?
You think?
Little, but it has made me come to terms with what I can control and what I can't. And the one thing that I can control is being kind to myself. And sometimes that is just as simple as taking a nap in the middle of the day when you feel like you should be hard at work, or going for a walk when you should be editing a happy hour or whatever, but there are a lot of people that don't have that luxury. And I know that. And that's why we support people who have to go out into the world, and we tip really big right now when we ask them to do something for us. But being kind to yourself and being true and being honest is a key in all this. Good job. Everyone needs to read her blog. Everyone needs to read her blog.
Yeah.
I think it's very hard for people, especially if you're not in a certain industry. I'll use music, arts, and entertainment as an example. If you don't live it, then you don't necessarily understand. So It's possible to be in a better position than other people, but still be struggling. And so because someone who is perhaps not a musician, for example, and has no idea, has never had, ventured into this industry at all, if they don't understand that, yes, everybody is still not working, because you're able to work from home and sit behind a desk and, and all of that, and you're fine. Our industry is still very much shut down and will be for the foreseeable future, except to the lucky few. So, it's hard to put yourself in other people's shoes, but there needs to be more of it.
You're right.
Agreed.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
We got that solved. So
there we go.
Okay, so
again, I appreciated your putting yourself out there like that. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a bunch of questions from people,
I have,
including Beegie, apparently. I'm sorry, Beegie.
it's all right.
I'm
Go
gonna
ahead.
I'm gonna step off for a second. You all chat for a minute, and then I'll be back.
All right. BG,
I mean,
are
you
you-
can talk. You don't have to wait
Oh,
for me to leave.
I
was
thought
gonna
she'd
ask
never
you if
leave.
you knew any of your
Okay,
father's students.
party's on. She's gone.
Oh,
Sorry, Beach. Go ahead.
I think this gentleman was probably studying with your father before you were born, because he and I graduated together and we're old as the hills. But I went to college with a guy from Fort Lauderdale named Mike Longo. His father was a bass player, and he was a wonderful piano player when he got to college already. And he and I graduated together at Western Kentucky University. We had a great piano section in the music school, and we had a teacher that had studied in Europe with several really major people. And so when we graduated, we were like, yes, I'm ready to go, you know. I stayed in Kentucky for 3 years to teach school, grade music school, but I really wanted to play. So I came to Nashville and I started getting freelance gigs in the studios. So I became a studio musician. And Mike went straight, he got into his little convertible. I can remember he came to tell me goodbye. I was playing a gig one night and he said, I'm driving nonstop through to New York.
Wow.
And he got a low rent apartment, and he lived there for the rest of his life. And last March, he passed away because of the COVID virus. And he had played with Dizzy for about 15 years and was his conductor and everything. But the thing that he talked about the most was when he got to New York and he started having gigs and stuff, some people kept saying, you know, you need to go and study with Oscar Peterson. And he did. He moved up to Canada for 6 or 8 months. And for the rest of his life, he talked about Oscar and how wonderful a teacher he was. And he said that Oscar actually, and Mike was a really good bebop piano player at the age of 16. But he had a lot to learn. We all did. And he said, always when he talked about your father, everything I know that is worth anything came from Oscar Peterson.
Oh, that's wow.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I never had the opportunity to meet Mike, but I was very familiar with him. I know we had a lot of mutual friends, and he was very loved. I had no idea that he studied with Dad. That's incredibly
That's very sweet.
Yeah.
wow. I wonder what year that would have been. Do you know?
Who would have? I graduated in 58, and he graduated in 59. So by the time he got to New York, it was 60s,
Right.
1960.
That is really sweet, Beach. That's a great story.
Yeah,
That's so wonderful.
He was a wonderful musician and a wonderful friend, and but Oscar Peterson was a big influence in his life.
Mm.
Oh wow.
You could hardly be a piano player in the last 80 years. So, you know, who wouldn't say that?
I have an aside that happened about, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago on the internet. I had a friend in Las Vegas, a piano player, and he got one of our records, and then he gave it to a friend, and because he liked us, and he gave it to this friend who is also a piano player in Vegas. And the friend said, well, she's really nice to listen to, but she's no Oscar Peterson. And I didn't reply to him, but I thought, nobody can do Oscar Peterson except Oscar Peterson.
I will never understand comments like that. I will never understand people who make comments like that.
I always love it after a gig when someone says, "You sound like so and so," and you're like,
"Thanks." Yeah.
Right. Reminds me of a story about, and I don't remember who it was. It was a jazz musician who was playing at the White House, and presidents from time to time would sit down and play a little piano. And Richard Nixon sat down and played a tune. And when he stood up, a friend asked him, "What do you think?" And he leaned over and said, "Well, he's no Harry Truman."
I got to play Harry's piano.
That's funny.
That's good.
Having a convention of AFTRA, Screen Actors Guild, and I was on the national board. So they threw a party after the thing was over for the officers, and we got up to the penthouse where our boss and everything is laid out all this stuff, and there was a piano there. And he was playing some of my music over the loudspeaker, and he came over and he said, "That's Harry Truman's piano." And I said, "Oh, that's nice." I couldn't tell what it was until I got looking at it. And he said, "Would you like to play it?" And I said, "Sure." So I sat down and played a bunch of songs on Harry Truman's piano. It was wildly out of tune, so I didn't stay long.
Shocking.
Right.
But it had been freshly painted, so it's
there you go.
okay. Oh, that's funny.
Oh boy.
So
Okay.
do you share your dad's fairly famous prankster side?
Yes, he was notorious for his pranking and for being a troublemaker, and I do think that if that means I get to blame my mischievous activities on him, then yes.
You really can't help
Excellent.
it. It's not your fault.
Exactly. It's in my DNA. I didn't get the technical, piano skills, but I got the prankster part.
But you will hide cheese in the radiator, right?
Oh man. Ooh.
Is that the most famous of his pranks, or
that's definitely up there. Another one he was quite proud of was Norman had bought Ella a fur coat, and
oh no,
and she was wearing it everywhere all day, and she was so touched by it and treasured it. And Dad had been to, in his words, a joke store, and had come out with a number of things. And one of them was a fake pen and ink bottle that looked like it had been spilled on its side. And he said to Ella that I need to catch up on my correspondence or whatever he said. And, can I do it in your room? And she said, "Okay, but just, Oscar, be careful of my coat." And he came out like 10 minutes later, and he said that he was in tears, and, "Ella, I'm so sorry. I don't." And he had put this thing on the coat, and she started crying, and then she let him off the hook, and she said, "Oh, that's okay. It's an accident." And he goes, "I felt awful." And every time he told that story, I would just think to myself, "You should. That's terrible." It's so mean.
That's quite a prank. That's great.
I love that. That's good. That's a good prank.
Well,
You
you probably can't top that, so you're okay.
No, I can't top that. He also sent anonymous flowers to a friend of ours to her work. She worked at a jewelry store, and he sent her anonymous flowers from her secret admirer on multiple occasions. And then on Valentine's Day sent this very elaborate thing. And then he came in the store, and she was just beside herself. She said, "I should have known."
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so we have some questions from fans. Now, did you all have anything else you wanted to ask?
I just wanted to say that when I was in graduate school, the Concert Gabal album came out, And the other one was, I think, done in Canada. There were 2 albums that year that were like wonderful. I mean, everything he played was wonderful, but these were like just superb. And we listened to those. The whole time I was in graduate school, we listened to those 2 records.
Oh my gosh. Maybe
Yeah.
Stratford? Is that the other one?
Yeah,
Stratford?
that's the other one. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are spectacular albums. Oh man.
So
Yes,
much
they
great
are.
music. Yeah.
Now, Céline, do you manage his estate?
I don't. I am actually
Okay.
not I am not a formal member of the estate. My mother does.
Okay.
Yes.
I wondered, I know that's got to be like a full-time gig. So I wondered how involved you were in that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, that's her.
You get to spend your time making new music and introducing people to new artists and
Yes.
talking about your dad.
Exactly.
Okay. I have we have lots of questions. We won't get to all of them. And this is all pre-recorded, so we kind of jumped into this. We just threw you in the deep end. But if you need a break, if you need to stop, if you need to go, whatever, we're good. So
Oh, I'm great.
Reload.
y'all,
Really?
yeah,
Yes.
if you need to reload, pour yourself a drink, do whatever you need to do. This is a happy hour. We've been bombarding you, and I apologize. We're very excited
No.
to have you on. But it is equal parts. You can throw stuff back at us. This is not an interview. So
Yes.
we are, pretend like you're sitting, we're all in New York after one of our gigs at Birdland, and you're in town, and we all end up at the Monkey Bar, and we're all just hanging out. That's
love
what
it.
this is supposed to be right now.
Yes. Yes.
So if I have or do drink too much, nobody can be mad at me because at the Monkey Bar, that's what we would do, right? So here we go.
That's the point. That's the point of
Yes.
going there.
Exactly.
And if you
Okay.
want bitters in your Manhattan, you can have bitters in your Manhattan.
Thank you.
We won't tell Bill Samuels Jr.
If you can remember leaving the Monkey Bar, you have not succeeded.
That's a good point.
Yep.
Good point. Do you get to New York a lot? Do you? In a normal travel open world, did you go
Yes.
to New York a lot?
I tried New York. I actually had this conversation with a friend not too long ago. This is the first year of my life where not only have I not traveled at all, but that I've ever not been to New York at least twice.
Wow.
Well,
It's-
we plan to be there. The trio has a kind of a standing date at Carnegie the first weekend of October, the first Saturday. So it is currently scheduled for October 2nd to, let's see how fingers crossed. If you can
Fingers
get
crossed,
to the
definitely.
city, we'll make sure you've got good seats to the show, and we will hang out at the Monkey Bar afterwards.
I
We'll do
would love that. I can't tell you how much I would love that. That I hope to be able to do that for sure.
Yeah.
They're keeping us pretty locked in our own country.
Yeah.
Oh,
but it's the right thing.
For
they
your
don't
own
want you around the
safety.
Americans. I can't blame them. I can't blame them at all.
I think if the Carnegie Hall gig doesn't happen, we should go anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Or maybe we should just go to Toronto. Do you think they'll
You
let
can
us
do
in?
that.
We can't
They'll
get in there, I don't think.
Well, no.
They're not
if
gonna
you come
let
by
us.
air, if you come by
They're gonna-
air,
They'll let Roger in. He's a citizen. And we can all be his sister wives. Except George, I don't know what's going to happen for you.
I'll be his
I don't
sister,
think so.
bro.
My adopted son, George.
oh my gosh! Oh, you're a
Oh.
Canadian citizen as well.
I'm a dually. I was. My father was in the Air Force, U.S. Air Force, stationed in St. John's, Newfoundland, when I was born.
Wow.
So I found out some years later that the fact that I was born there and had a Canadian birth certificate, I am a citizen. In fact, it was that trip when I said I met your father.
Mhm.
When we came into the customs in Toronto, the guy asked me, "Where were you born?" And I said, "Well, St. John's, Newfoundland." And the border agent says, "Do you have your birth certificate with you?" And I thought, "Uh-oh." I've opened a can of worms. I said, no, I don't carry that around. He says, well, next time you come in, bring it with you. We'll give you a passport. You're a citizen.
That's fantastic.
Cool.
But I have the Canadian passport, American passport. So I'll be there. Even if these ne'er-do-wells can't make it, I'll be there.
Wait a minute.
I don't have it with me. I have my Canadian passport here, but I also have, I'm also an American citizen because my mother was born in Virginia and lived in the States until she married my dad. So I have my dual citizenship as well.
Great.
Nice.
Yeah.
And if I remember from somewhere I was reading, your mom and dad, as they say in the movies, met cute.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes. They met post gig at a restaurant she was waitressing at.
That's such a sweet story. I just love that.
In Virginia?
No, in Florida. She was in
Florida.
At that point in Sarasota, Florida. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's nice. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to add before I start on the questions? If I don't get to some of these questions, our fans are gonna cut us off.
Go.
I'd just like to say the first jazz album I ever owned was the Oscar Peterson Trio +1 with Clark Terry.
Favorite.
That's a big favorite.
At the time, I was in my teens and I was playing in funk and R&B bands, electric bass. And my brother-in-law at the time gave me the vinyl copy of this record, and he said, "You think you want to play bass? Listen to this." So that's when I imprinted on Ray Brown. And I sat down with that vinyl record and a Magnavox record player, and I learned Ray Brown's bass lines off that album note for note.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Best thing I ever did for my bass playing.
That's great.
And then years later, fast forward to Indiana University, another guy that was there was John Clayton. So John comes in as Ray's protege, and I just crawled right up under his wing, and I said, "Show me." So he put me through the whole Ray Brown approach to walking bass lines.
Wow. That's great.
Funny story. At one point, he says in one of the lessons, I want you to get an album called Oscar Peterson Trio +1 with Clark Terry, and I want you to learn Ray Brown's bass line on Blues for Smedley, starting at the point where the trumpet solo starts and Oscar drops out. And I grabbed my bass and I went, doon, 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 doon. I played the two choruses. He goes, "Okay, next lesson."
That's great.
Oh my gosh. That's fantastic.
John was, of course, a great mentor because he taught me a lot about, Ray's method and Ray's approach with sound and time and tone production.
Well, speaking of him, can I ask one quick question? The Piano Master, the Opie Story concert that was produced, was that recorded? Wasn't John? That made me think of it because I think I read that John Clayton was the music director. Was that recorded or was it just a live concert? Not just,
it was a live concert. We did 4 shows over 2 nights, and it was not recorded, at least not that I know of. You never know. But unfortunately, it was not recorded. But it must have
been an amazing production.
I can say with complete and total certainty that I've never had a professional experience quite that special. And then, of course, there's the personal aspect of it. It was just a dream come true.
Oh, that's wonderful. And that was like the 70th anniversary of your dad's Carnegie Hall?
Yes, that's right.
Wow.
Yes.
Was that at Lincoln Center?
Yes, it was at the Jazz at Lincoln Center. So John was music director, and we had Kenny Barron and Benny Green, Ben Patterson, and Gonzalo Rubalcaba. It was Jeff Hamilton and Ulf Joaquin, Dad's guitar player. It was just heaven, absolute heaven.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Now, I see a lot of posts online. You do have some really close ties to some of the people who worked with your dad, and then probably a little bit beyond that. Do you keep in touch with a lot of his friends and peers and stay engaged in that world?
I do. I think for me, whether a musician or otherwise, there are all these remarkable individuals that I grew up around that have been so good to me over the years, and have especially since my dad's been gone, have stepped in and surrounded me and my mom with love and just really taken care of me. And so there are a number of deeply, deeply important people in my life that come from my dad's life.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
That's part of it. It's part of the legacy you get to share, you get to pass along and create in your own way.
Yeah.
tears I say